welcome to Making Sense with Steve. Today, I think what we'll talk about is tax reform. Now, with tax reform, it is going to require an overhaul of the way we do business as a government. We can eliminate the majority of the federal government. We can take what the federal government has been doing and the way they've been doing it and put all of that down at the state level to where the people are more in touch with what's going on. In my opinion, Abraham Lincoln was probably one of the worst presidents in our history. While yes, to his credit, we can say that legally he ended slavery. But what President Lincoln did was President Lincoln was the very first president that forced the will of the federal government upon the sovereign rights of the states. That was a huge error in our history, in my opinion. And ever since then, we have allowed the federal government to grow larger and larger and larger and have more control over our life. We don't need a federal Department of Education. Our education system is broken, and anybody that will deny that is lying to. We don't need federal housing. We don't need the federal government to take care of the interstate. The roads have been built. Each state can take care of the roads that are in their state. They can take care of their bridges. They can take care of all their infrastructure. There's many things. Federal welfare, that needs to go away. Welfare should be handled by the state. Minimum wage laws, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, I personally disagree with them. Federal minimum wage is a joke. There are different costs of living based on different areas. Let the state handle whatever the minimum wage is for their state. My plan totally eliminates all taxes, or sales tax. So with a pure sales tax system, everybody will be paying. Why? Because everybody buys products. So all your local drug dealers, all your hookers, all your people that everybody complains, oh, they get tips and they don't pay taxes on their tips. They'll all be paying. And people say, oh, well, the rich need to pay more. Well, you know what? They're going to pay sales tax when they buy their jet. And they're going to pay sales tax when they buy their yacht. So everybody's going to be paying sales tax. So how does it work? The federal government has its budget. The federal government will have to submit next year's budget this year. The states each pay a percentage of the federal government's budget. How do we determine that percentage? Simple. We use the Electoral College. Whatever percentage of the Electoral College that your state represents, that's the percentage of the federal budget you have to pay. And that money is collected out of sales tax in your state. Plain and simple. Senators, congressmen, federal congress, they should be paid by the state. The state they represent, not by the federal government. They are not the federal government's employees. They are our employees. We pay their wages. Well, what wage do we pay them? We pay them the average income of the people in the district they represent. Whoa, totally fresh concept, right? But what this does is this forces them create an environment to increase the wages of the people in the district they represent if they want a raise. It's that simple. They can't just vote themselves a raise. It doesn't happen that way. No. This is ridiculous. We don't do this in any other sector of our society. Hey, Steve, do you want a raise? Well, yes, Steve, I do. How much of a raise do you want? Well, I want this much. Okay, it's granted. How stupid is that? But we, the American people, oh yeah, we're all for that. That's a great plan. Really? License plates stay with the vehicle for life. I believe we should have plates on the vehicle because I do believe that our peace officers should have a reasonable idea of who they're talking to when they pull a vehicle over. But I don't believe that we need to be stamping out new plates or stickers or anything else every year. This is a complete money-generating machine at the taxpayer's expense. No, get rid of all that. Driver's license, I believe you should be required to pass a proficiency test to operate a motor vehicle. That's it. If you pass the proficiency test, you receive your license, it's over. You have your license, it's done. We're not going back and renewing licenses every, whatever, years, 5, 7 years, whatever your state happens to be. We're not going to do that anymore. All that is shoveling money into the government, your local government. We're not going to do that. It's handled by sales tax. Hunting and fishing licenses. These are two of the most ridiculous things I can think of when it comes to taxes. As an American citizen, you are not allowed to harvest the natural resources of this country to feed your family unless you pay the government money. How crazy is that? How crazy is that? You're unemployed, but you've got a fishing pole. But you can't go fishing to catch fish to feed your family unless you pay the government first. Well, you're unemployed. How are you going to pay the government? You're not. Do we still need game wardens? Yes, we do. Again, they're paid for out of sales tax. And why do we need game wardens? We need game wardens so that people don't abuse the system. There's going to be limits on the animals that you can take. That's just common sense. I've covered vehicles. I've covered your normal run-of-the-mill stuff. When you find out how much you're paying in taxes, because it's all consolidated into one place, no more property tax, but when it's all consolidated in one place, sales tax. And when we the people finally find out how much of our money is actually going to the government, we will see true reform. People will stand up and start complaining that we're paying way too much money for what we're getting back in return. We can trim the federal government. If we take up this tax plan, the IRS, the federal IRS as we know it, basically would cease to exist. It could run on maybe 25 employees at the most. And everybody's going to say, oh, what about putting all these people out of work? You know what? Right now unemployment is at a historical low. I have talked with business owners where I live. They can't find employees because there aren't enough people out there looking for work. So there's plenty for these people to do. They can find a job in a heartbeat. We'd also be expanding IRS at each state level, which would create openings for ex-IRS employees. We'll use our federal government for creating, regulation isn't the word I want to use, standards. So let's say school. But we're not going to send a bunch of teachers to Washington to discuss, what children need as requirements. That's absurd. Teachers have no idea what students need when they leave school and go out into the real world. We're going to send business owners up there. And maybe not even the business owners, maybe the low-level management from businesses. Because those are the ones in direct contact with the employees that are actually producing the product. And they're going to tell Congress what they need as far as basic skills when children come out of school so that they're hireable. Mike Lowe, I love him. I think he's a great guy. I've never personally met him. I'm just going on what he says. But Mike Lowe is a result of the problem. The problem is we are no longer putting our children out of high school with basic skills. They can't even read a tape measure. They can't convert fractions to decimal. This is absurd. Absolutely absurd. But I'll bet you ask them about drugs and they'll tell you everything under the sun about them. You ask them about sex, they've got that all figured out. We need to dismantle and rebuild what we're doing. We need to remove power from the federal government, put it back into the states' hands, and the states can handle it, and the states are all closer to the people, and so the people will have more control over it. One of the other things that I would do is I would create a division of the government, federal government, to go through all the laws that are on the books and start getting rid of this stupidity. Mandatory insurance. How in the world did we ever allow the insurance companies to run our country? It started with seatbelt laws, then they went to helmets, then they went to mandatory car insurance, now it's mandatory health insurance. The next thing on the list is going to be mandatory life insurance. Well, how in the world did we ever think it was a great idea to allow a private industry, the insurance industry, to force us by the government's gun to give them money? Why did we allow our representatives to force that upon us? I have an answer to that, but it's going to be in a different video. It's a video connected to the direction we've allowed our society to go. I will also be doing another video on our public education system and just how broken it is. For now, I think you've got a rough idea of what I think would be a realistic solution to the tax situation. Naturally, it's going to take more minds than just mine to come up with everything involved in making this transition. And this transition won't happen overnight. It's probably going to take something like 5 years or so. But it will put the power back into the people's hands. It'll put it back at the state level. And the federal government will only run federal things. The federal government has no business in your personal life. None. Absolutely none. So for now, I'm going to close. I hope I've made a little bit of sense to some of you out there.